Hello everyone, and welcome to today's Property Market Update, where we'll reveal the latest data and statistics to determine the current state of the Australian property market. Through this process, the data will expose the locations that property investors should be avoiding, as these are the markets where a fall in property values is likely. Of course, as property investors, declining property values is not something we want to experience. So today, we'll demonstrate how our proven analysis model can identify these markets so they can be avoided. This analysis process will also uncover property markets where investors should be paying close attention, as high capital growth rates are predicted by some of Australia's brightest property economists. My name is Glenn Piper. I'm the founder and director of Meridian Australia. Over the past 15 years, I've been using the information which we'll share in today's webinar to direct my own investment decisions in the Australian property market. I've been very active in all forms of property investment, utilising all strategies available, including buy and hold, flipping, off the plan, renovating, buying off receivers, and also developing. My experience and success spans across residential and commercial real estate. I'm also joined by Adam Duffy, a partner at Meridian Australia. Hello, Adam.
Thank you, Glenn. As a property investor, I've also personally utilised the process that we're about to take you through today to build my own property portfolio over the past 12 years. I joined Meridian in 2011 with a background in financial planning and a passion for letting the numbers make my property investment decisions. At Meridian Australia, we have a very analytical approach to the property investment market, which has proven to be very, very effective at identifying the right market at the right time. We then assist our clients to purchase the right property within that market and use negotiation to ensure that they are paying the right price. Our service is to assist our clients through each and every single little step of this process to ensure that they are investing in property successfully. Before we make a start, I must provide a disclaimer to importantly state that today's information is of a general nature specific to the property market. So please don't take any of this as specific advice for your own circumstances. Please seek appropriate financial advice from a qualified advisor before making any financial decision. What we will cover begins with a brief background on Meridian Australia. We'll then move into the exact way that we use analysis to identify a high-performing property. We'll show you firsthand how to use the data to identify the right market to be investing in today. We'll show you the growth rates expected on every city right now. And finally, we'll finish by illustrating exactly how we can assist you.
Meridian was established in 2011, and with a strong focus on property analysis, our organisation has a very clear understanding of what factors cause prices to rise and what factors cause prices to fall in the Australian property market. For over 10 years, we have combined our analysis ability with our decades of combined experience to negotiate profitable property investments for our large investor network. Since 2011, we have negotiated over 1,500 property transactions exceeding $700 million in value right across the country. Each property endured a rigorous analysis process, as we believe that proper property analysis is the foundation of any successful property investment.
There are essentially two things that a property investment can do for you. It can grow and it can create cash flow. Now, a good property investment today should not cost you anything to hold. The rent it receives should cover all of the costs that it creates. And it should actually be positive when you take into effect benefits like depreciation and factor them in. However, growth is what will create true wealth in your property portfolio. And at Meridian, analysis is at the very core of our business. It is what we use to identify markets which are likely to perform best. Our approach to analysis is very, very unique and very robust. Our analysis process begins with our investor panel of economic experts, each of which have been handpicked by Meridian due to the individual strengths that they bring to the table when assessing the property market. Very importantly, they are all independent and they are all unbiased when it comes to analysing the market. Each of these experts have a specialty in at least one of the fundamentals that drive the market to perform. Terry from KPMG specialises in economic analysis, infrastructure expenditure and risk mitigation. Angie from Charter Keck Kramer is an expert across all fundamentals in our research model and has a specialty in property market forecasting. In fact, the Australian Financial Review named Angie as the most accurate forecaster in Australia in 2018. Rachel and Sarah from BIS Oxford Economics are an organisation well known in the property space. Bethany from SGS Economics reports to all tiers of government and specialises in analysing infrastructure investment. Tim Fisher is a professor of economics at Sydney Uni, and he takes a very global perspective to our national market. And finally, Don Smith from BCI provides us with one piece of information about every single market we are considering, along with Glenn, myself, our Head of Research, Brad Wern, our investor panel is formed. Collectively, we meet with our panel throughout the year to analyse all of the markets around the nation to determine where we should be focused today to identify the right market. With our panel, we start with the big picture and work our way down with the panel to the city level. If, for example, Victoria was identified as the right state to be investing in today, which city within Victoria is right? Melbourne, Geelong, Ballarat or Bendigo? Then as a business, we take it right down to the suburb level, which is extremely important, as suburbs located right next to each other can perform completely differently. At our panel meetings, we are closely analysing and discussing 7 key fundamentals which determine the likely direction of property values. We call them the macro fundamentals. The first of which is the economy. The engine behind a good property market is its economy. From risk mitigation perspective, we need to identify that the economy is diverse and supplies a variety of different types of employment, never relying on a single source of employment. This process rules out areas like mining towns and markets solely reliant on tourism. The main thing that a healthy, growing economy will do is attract people to want to move and live in that area. Population growth is a second fundamental, and it will be coming from overseas, interstate or intrastate. A high level of population growth will be creating direct demand on the property market as the population requires homes to live in. Infrastructure, the third fundamental, is what will keep the population in that market once they move there. Things like good schooling, public transport and shopping centres simply need to be present and attractive in the area. Another risk mitigation tip of ours is to target suburbs with an owner-occupier percentage of above 70%. The highly owner-occupied market is a good indicator of the attractiveness of the area. It's also typically a market with less volatility, as homeowners are far less likely to quickly sell their home in times of financial distress. As an investor, may. We're also heavily focused on future spending, and we use the expertise of Terry to identify where future infrastructure spending is occurring. Things like new hospitals, new CBDs being created, which will in turn create new employment, which will in turn create new population growth. As you can see, the fundamentals are well connected. Rental yields are an extremely important fundamental to ensure the right cash flow is going to be generated on your property investment. A strong rental yield will generate demand from investors in the market. As investors typically make up 30% of demand, it's important to be attracting this demand to the market. The first 4 fundamentals really all relate to demand for property, but it doesn't matter how heavily demanded a market is. If there's too much supply coming onto that market or too much supply already in that market, prices won't grow. In fact, they can fall. This is Economics 101. We are searching for a market with much higher demand compared to supply of property. This equation will see upward pressure on rental and property values. There are 2 ways to analyse supply. The first is current, and the statistic to closely monitor is the vacancy rate, which tells us the percentage of rental properties that are vacant in that market. 3% is widely considered to be a balanced market. 4% and above is considered to be an oversupplied market. Ideally, we want to see the vacancy rate below 3%, ideally below 2%. But this only tells us the current position of supply. What tells us about the future is the pipeline for the suburb. How many dwellings are in development applications, how many are approved, how many are already in construction coming into that suburb. Obtaining this data is very important, and this is where Don from BCI steps in. He can tell us for any suburb right around the country exactly how many dwellings we can expect to enter that market over a 1 to 4 year window. It's very expensive data to obtain, but very, very valuable information to know. As you can see, we are using purely numbers here to analyse the property market and determine if it's strong or not. There is no emotion involved in this process. It is purely with the head and not with the heart. The 6th fundamental, availability of credit, simply refers to the lending environment at the time. A looser lending policy means that obtaining borrowing is relatively easier, which makes it easier to inject more demand into the market. And finally, the 7th fundamental is affordability. It's an extremely important fundamental to clearly understand, as it will determine if a market can grow from its current position or if it's likely to correct and fall backwards in value. We will show you now exactly how we use this fundamental to analyse the current markets.
Here we will explore the influence affordability had on property prices in Sydney over the past 25 years. This will demonstrate why this is such an important statistic to understand and monitor. This line is a generalised representation of Sydney property values between 1996 and 2021. Between 1996 and 2004, median property values increased 150%. Between 2004 and 2009, prices experienced a correction with no growth occurring. We then saw strong capital growth with prices increasing 98% to 2017, before another correction of 18% between 2017 and 2019. In recent years, we've then seen a further growth of 24%. Let's now review the relationship of affordability and price fluctuations. If we then use this line to represent incomes, which increase in a more linear fashion in line with inflation, we can see in 1996 a widened gap between property prices and income. Our panelists used percentage of household disposable income spent on mortgage repayments as a calculation to measure affordability. And in 1996, affordability was high, with just 25% of household incomes being spent on mortgage repayments. However, due to strong levels of demand compared to supply, high affordability and a fluid lending market, prices increased 150% to 2004. This rapid increase in property prices decreased affordability, with percentage of household income spent on mortgage repayments increasing to 40%. This has proven to be an unaffordable level for Sydney homeowners, and significant price increases from this point are simply not possible unless affordability improves. Between 2004 and 2009, there was an increase in affordability as property prices moved sideways and incomes increased. By 2009, interest rates also fell, which dramatically improved affordability, with percentage of household incomes being spent on mortgage repayments returning to 26%. Now you'll notice prices did not increase consistently with incomes. This is because people don't spend more on property just because they can afford to. People spend more on property when they can afford to, but when they are forced to because they are competing with multiple buyers in a high demand, low supply environment. In 2009, construction had slowed, rental yields were high, vacancy rates were low, and population growth was at record highs. These factors combined with affordability will result in capital growth. And between 2009 and 2017, prices increased 98%, making property unaffordable once again, with percentage of household incomes spent on mortgage repayments returning to 39%. By 2019, not only were prices unaffordable, there was also a tightening in lending policies, an increase in supply, higher vacancies, lower rental yields, and reduced demand. All of these factors will result in a correction, and prices decreased 18%. In 2020, we were hit with the global pandemic and interest rates were slashed, which increased affordability once again, and lending policies were also improved, which encouraged demand back into the market. We have now witnessed the Sydney property market absorb that affordability with the recent price growth. But as you can see, we are back at peak levels with interest rates at record lows. Consideration must be given to what happens when interest rates increase in the near future. If we complete the same exercise for Melbourne, you can witness a similar pattern to that of Sydney. In 2003, there was just 21% of household income spent on mortgage repayments. In addition, there was excess demand relative to supply, so prices increased 85% to 2010. Prices then experienced a period of stagnation between 2010 and 2014. During this time, affordability returned, as did demand, and prices increased a further 45% to 2017. As with Sydney, a lack of affordability combined with excess supply and a tightening in lending policies caused Melbourne to enter a correction. However, the fall in interest rates and improved lending conditions caused by the global pandemic saw affordability and demand return to the property market, and with that, prices responded in a similar way as witnessed in Sydney. Looking forward, Melbourne has the same risk concerns as Sydney. With there being very little affordability present, investors must ask themselves what will happen when interest rates increase in the near future. With this in mind, investors should pay close attention to affordability levels of particular suburbs and identify gentrifying areas where higher income earners are moving in to those more affordable suburbs and can afford to push prices up from current levels. Fortunately, in Australia, we have quite a wide and diverse property market. So while Sydney and Melbourne property markets tend to be closely linked, there are many other markets which could be in a completely different situation. To demonstrate this further, let's apply the same exercise to the Brisbane property market. Historically, Brisbane has proven to be counter-cyclical to that of Sydney. It tends to be that when Sydney becomes unaffordable, more Sydney-siders relocate to the Sunshine State, increasing demand on their property market. This could be seen in the period between 2001 and 2008, where Brisbane experienced a boom in population growth and in property values. This followed the strong growth and loss of affordability in Sydney. During this period, Brisbane property prices increased 178%, which dramatically reduced affordability, increasing percentage of household incomes from 18% to 35%. With excess construction and a lack of affordability, the Brisbane property market entered a correction for the following 10 years. While prices corrected, incomes increased and interest rates fell, increasing affordability once again. And today, the percentage of household incomes spent on mortgage repayments is just 21%. In addition to relatively high affordability, the Brisbane property market also enjoys low vacancy rates, high rental yields, heavy infrastructure investment, and high population growth. These factors are all conducive of capital growth, and as you can see, Brisbane's high affordability compares favourably when compared to Sydney and Melbourne. Now let's take a look at Australia's other capitals. Here is a snapshot of the cities as at June 2021. Sydney and Melbourne are nearing their peak levels, Hobart is not far behind, and the rest of the capital cities are measuring relatively high affordability. Of course, it's important to remember that this is just one metric to monitor, and proper property analysis is about measuring and comparing each and every one of those macro indicators. Prices won't just increase because people can afford to pay more. Prices increase when people can afford to pay more and are forced to compete with other buyers, which only happens when demand is high and supply is low.
Now, each and every single macro fundamental needs to be strong at the suburb level. If even one is missing or poor, the market is simply not investment worthy. Once a suburb is found, the micro analysis then begins. The type of property depends on the demographics of the area. If, for example, the market was dominant with families and children, a house is what we will be looking to target. If it was more young professional dominant, our preference would move towards a townhouse or an apartment. When it comes to quality, our preference is a high quality modern dwelling which will be very attractive to a high quality tenant, which will generate a strong cash flow and have minimal risk to repairs and maintenance through owning the asset. And finally, value. We will then approach vendors with the right type of property to negotiate with them directly. We have a very, very good negotiation ability and we are fierce when it comes to value. We've perfected this process over the past 10 years. One thing we have to our advantage is our clients' buying power. We're able to approach a vendor to purchase 10 houses or 20 townhouses. This gives us a massive negotiation power for our clients to take advantage of and pushing that price down. Now, as a business, how we earn an income is in this process. A part of negotiation with the vendor is not only on price, but also to highlight that if one of our clients was to purchase their property, they will no longer need the services of a local real estate agent in the transaction. Instead, we negotiate that they pay a fee to Meridian Australia and cut out that local agent. The benefit of this situation to the vendor is accessing our client to purchase their property who could be based anywhere in the country, in fact the world, because it's in the right market at the right time, it's the right type, and they're negotiable on price. The benefit of this structure to yourself though, as an investor, is getting access to Meridian service without an expense at any point. Our job is to reduce the cost in the transaction for you and not add any into the process. We have experience with property from right around the country as the markets have moved over the years. Our core focus today is houses and townhomes in markets that have the strongest fundamentals in place for growth. Here are some of the recommendations over recent years to give you an idea of the type of property and locations that clients have secured. For example, Nowra, early in 2020, our panel identified the chance that there would be an exodus of population from the CBDs into the regional markets and the opportunity that was presented. Nowra is a regional market to Sydney, which had strong fundamentals in place. We secured 4-bedroom homes in this market for our clients, which have since performed very, very well. Arana Hills is a terrace 10 kilometres from the CBD, a much more young professional dominant market, and hence the focus on townhomes. Young professionals shifting from the CBD into the middle ring have driven up both rents and prices. Phillip in the ACT, a very strong asset secured by our clients in 2019 when Canberra was identified of having strong fundamentals, particularly for terraces and houses, but very poor fundamentals for apartments. These townhomes were secured for clients 5 kilometres from the CBD, generating a very, very strong positive cash flow. In Upper Kedron in 2018, a 4-bedroom home just 12 kilometres from the Brisbane CBD, a true blue chip property investment and very in line with our focus at the time of houses in close proximity to the Brisbane CBD. Now, we provide our clients each year with an annual review of your portfolio to ensure that you are staying on track with its development. We monitor the current stats for the suburbs that you've got properties in, the rental level of the property, never being complacent with rental rises. and also to assess the current value of the properties that you own, based off similar sales nearby in the market. Like these, for example, in Arana Hills, representing an extremely strong growth in a 12-month period, and Upper Kedron here, growth after only a 2-year period, each illustrating a strong performance. Each of these examples has allowed clients to access the equity and the uplift of these properties to continue the growth of their portfolios.
Now it's time to take a look at the most recent market forecast by Angie Zigomanis from Chartered Check Kramer. Here are Angie Zigomanis' forecasts for the next 2 years. Sydney is expected to perform at 11.6%, Melbourne 11.4%, Brisbane at 18.3%, Perth at 20.1%, Adelaide at 11.4%, both Canberra and Hobart at 9%, and Darwin at 12.8%. To add our own commentary to this, Sydney is expected to be in its final stages of the growth cycle, with its recent jump in prices fueled by interest rate cuts and relaxation of lending policies. With percentage of household income spent on mortgage repayments measuring at 37%, the additional 11% price growth over these years is expected to absorb what little affordability is left in Sydney. Meridian is targeting neighbouring regional LGAs where affordability still exists and Sydney-siders are relocating to. Generally speaking, Melbourne is at the later stages of its growth cycle. However, it is still relatively affordable when compared to Sydney. Excess supply, lack of migration and lower rental yields all remain a concern. Meridian remains diligent in this market, seeking opportunities in suburb where affordability still exists and that will benefit from state-driven infrastructure projects. For Brisbane, these growth rates are expected to be the beginning of its growth cycle following its previous decade-long correction. Capital growth over the medium term is expected to outperform the rest of the country. This will result from high affordability, large infrastructure investment, high migration rates, plus economic stimulus relating to the 2032 Brisbane Olympic Games. Perth is exiting a 14-year correction, and while our investor panels still have question marks surrounding medium-term economic performance and population growth, the market is expected to respond positively to the high levels of affordability, high rental yields and low supply. Adelaide is in a similar position to that of Perth, with the economy and population growth underperforming compared to other markets. However, relative affordability, high rental yields and low supply will support growth over the medium term. Canberra and Hobart are expected to achieve 9% over this period, and they are a little further along in the growth cycle than some of the other cities. Darwin is also expected to grow strongly at 12.8%. However, medium-term economic and population growth remain a concern. As you can see, at Meridian, we take a national, all-encompassing approach to property investment. We provide our investor network with the information they need to make an educated investment decision. We provide this level of detail right down to the suburb and individual property. Let's now take a look at what's included in the Meridian service.
At Meridian, we provide a full service of property investors, which starts with an individual fact-finding process, where the client will share with us what they are looking to achieve and the type of property investment that they are looking for. Meridian will then speak with the mortgage broker or advisor to determine what your borrowing capacity is. The next step involves sourcing the appropriate property investment for the client, where excellent value has been negotiated by our experienced acquisition team, and it's located within a growth market which has been identified by our investor panel. We'll then provide detailed property analysis on the city, the suburb, right down to the street level for that particular property investment, which will include a large cross-section of recent sales to determine exactly where value sits for that property investment. All of this analysis is provided to our clients so they can ensure that they are making their own educated decision. Finally, we provide support through the entire process, which includes liaising with banks, mortgage brokers and solicitors. We'll make sure you've completed your pre-purchase due diligence checklist, from building inspections, landlord insurance and obtaining a depreciation report. We'll then seek the most appropriate property manager in that market and we'll negotiate competitive fees with them directly for you. Looking forward, our clients can expect to hear from us very regularly on the performance of the property, the market, and we remain very available to answer any questions along the way. So if you are looking for some guidance when it comes to investing in property, some assistance, here are the 4 key reasons why we think you should be really working with Meridian Australia. Firstly, our investor panel, consisting of some of the most brightest minds in property analysis in the nation, which are directing our investment locations. We've assisted clients into over 1,500 property transactions over the past 11 years. We're very experienced, and we target a variety of property types, including houses, townhouses, and apartments where appropriate, with a wide range in purchase price from $400,000 up to $1 million. And finally, our service is completely free to our investor network. At no point is there a price for you to pay throughout this investor process to Meridian Australia. Shortly, you'll receive a feedback form to your device. If you'd like to arrange a meeting with a consultant to discuss your situation in more detail, please just quickly complete the form and one of our consultants will be in touch with you shortly. Glenn, myself and the whole team here at Meridian really look forward to hearing from you and assisting you with your property investment goals.